2025 might be your last year to travel to Japan. What if I told you that by this time next year, traveling to Japan might not just be harder, it might be nearly impossible? Japan used to be one of the best-kept secrets for budget travelers. For years, it carried this quiet, almost sacred reputation among experienced globetrotters, not just as a cultural gem, but as a place where your money went further than you'd ever expect. While most people assumed it was too expensive, too high-tech, or too exclusive, the seasoned travelers knew better. Japan wasn't just beautiful, it was surprisingly affordable. You could ride bullet trains that felt like something out of the future, flying past lush countryside at 200 miles per hour. You could slurp down a bowl of handmade ramen, complex, rich, perfectly balanced, for just a few bucks, sitting elbow to elbow with locals in a tiny shop tucked into an alley. And at night, you could sleep in a spotless capsule hotel with futuristic lighting and soft ambient music for less than the price of a dingy motel back home. Even the more traditional options, like staying in a ryokan with tatami mats and hot spring baths, felt attainable. It was like stepping into a postcard from the past, complete with meals that looked like art and the kind of quiet that made you forget time even existed. And somehow it all cost less than what you'd spend on a weekend in New York, London, or Paris. For many travelers, it felt like a hack, a loophole in the travel matrix. You were getting 5-star culture on a 3-star budget. Everything about Japan struck this perfect balance: ancient and modern, serene and electric, high-end and humble. And what made it even more special was that it didn't feel like it was trying to sell you anything. Unlike other major destinations that build their tourism economies around curated experiences, Japan felt like it just existed, proudly, quietly, without the need for gimmicks. It wasn't flashy, it didn't shout, and maybe that's why it worked. Backpackers, digital nomads, foodies, train lovers, anime fans, they all started catching on. Japan was the kind of place that welcomed you with quiet hospitality and blew you away without ever needing to show off. And for a long time, it stayed that way, affordable, peaceful, authentic. But in 2025, that version of Japan, the one that made it such an irresistible destination for smart travelers, is starting to slip away. Because something has shifted. The secret's out. The world has caught on. And with that surge of attention, the costs, the crowds, and the complications are rising faster than most people realize. So if you're still picturing Japan as that underrated budget paradise, the one where your money goes further and the experience feels untouched, you might be holding onto an image that no longer exists. In 2025, the cost of traveling to Japan is rising across the board. It's not subtle anymore. It's noticeable. Flights that once felt like a steal now come with hefty price tags, sometimes several $100s more than they were just a couple years ago. And it's not just airfare. Hotels that used to charge modest rates are now pricing like it's peak season year-round. A basic business hotel in central Tokyo, booked out months in advance, and double the rate it was pre-2020. Even meals, which Japan was once famous for keeping affordable, have crept up in price, especially in areas with high tourist traffic. And it's not just inflation driving these numbers. It's something deeper. It's demand. After years of being closed off due to the pandemic, Japan is back on the world's radar, and travelers are flooding in. In fact, it's become one of the most popular destinations on Earth right now. Social media is saturated with photos from Tokyo, Kyoto, Osaka. Travel vloggers can't get enough of it, and everyone seems to want to go at the same time. But the thing is, Japan's tourism infrastructure wasn't built for this kind of surge. Trains are crowded, hotels are overbooked, restaurants are full from lunch until night. Prices aren't just going up because businesses want to cash in. They're going up because they have to. Staffing is stretched thin. Transportation systems are working overtime. Demand is overwhelming supply, and the system is straining under the weight. And here's the real twist. The only reason Japan has been as affordable as it has in recent years is because of a historically weak yen. That weak currency gave travelers from places like the US, Europe, and Australia a massive boost in spending power. But now, economists are warning that the yen won't stay weak for long. It's already starting to recover, and once it does, prices for international visitors are going to spike. Fast. So if Japan has been sitting on your travel list, this might be your moment. Right now, you're still catching the tail end of a rare window. But once the yen rebounds and demand keeps climbing, the days of affordable, easy access to Japan could be gone. Maybe not forever, but for a very long time. And even if you can afford to go, that's only half the battle. Because cost isn't the only thing putting pressure on travelers right now. What many people don't realize until they arrive is just how crowded Japan has become. In 2025, Japan isn't just popular, it's bursting at the seams. Let's start with Kyoto. Once known for its quiet temples and meditative walks through bamboo groves, it's now packed from morning until night. Fushimi Inari Shrine, the famous spot with the red torii gates, shoulder-to-shoulder traffic, the kind of spiritual calm the place was known for, almost impossible to find on a normal day. And then there's Mount Fuji. Climbing season has turned into a logistical nightmare. So many people are attempting the trek that local officials have begun warning of a tourism crisis. The mountain is literally being worn down, and not metaphorically. Erosion, litter, and overcrowded trails have made the experience more dangerous and less enjoyable. But it's not just the famous spots that are feeling the pressure. Even the quiet, off-the-grid destinations, the mountain onsens, small fishing villages, remote forests, are being flooded with visitors trying to escape the chaos of the cities. But with so many people doing the same thing, those places are starting to feel just as overwhelmed. The solitude, the stillness, the sense of discovery, it's all being chipped away by tour buses, phone cameras, and wait lists. And while travelers might feel a little disappointed, the people who actually live in these places are feeling something else entirely: exhaustion. In some neighborhoods, locals are putting up signs asking tourists not to take photos of them or their homes. In Kyoto's Gion district, where geishas still live and work, there are now English warnings asking visitors to stop following and filming them, like they're part of a parade. In Nara, officials have started publicly begging people to stop feeding the deer cookies, snacks, and junk food that makes them sick. The tension is growing, and Japan's government is starting to act, carefully but deliberately. Some temples have raised their entrance fees to reduce crowd size. Others have begun limiting access during certain parts of the day. Cities like Kyoto and Kamakura are rolling out new tourism taxes. And in 2024, Japan began testing a digital reservation system that caps the number of international visitors allowed into certain cultural heritage sites during peak days. This isn't just about preservation anymore. It's about sustainability. Japan is trying to protect what makes it unique before it gets swallowed up by the sheer weight of global tourism. And if the trend continues, we could be looking at a future where visiting Japan feels less like a spontaneous adventure and more like trying to get a ticket to a sold-out concert. Because if the crowds don't slow down, the rules will only get stricter. And traveling freely through Japan, the way people have for decades, might not be possible for much longer. And here's the thing, it's not just about managing crowds. It's about managing access. While the flood of tourism is happening out in the open, behind the scenes, Japan is quietly tightening the rules on who gets to come in at all. It started after COVID, when Japan, like a lot of countries, introduced digital systems to manage health records and customs forms. At first, it seemed practical. Upload your passport info, verify your vaccine status, print out a QR code, done. It was marketed as a way to streamline entry and modernize border control. And for the most part, it worked. But those systems didn't go away. In fact, they've gotten more detailed, more permanent, and more strict. Now, in 2025, every single traveler must register online through the Visit Japan web system before they even board their flight. You have to declare where you're staying, when you're leaving, and how you're funding your trip. In some cases, travelers are even asked to show proof of sufficient funds, especially if their travel dates don't line up with a return ticket or hotel reservation. Most people won't have an issue. If you've got your plans locked in and your documents ready, you'll likely sail through immigration. But the bigger picture is clear. Japan is becoming more selective and more cautious about who it lets in. And it's not just about tourism anymore. There's growing political pressure within Japan to get tougher on immigration overall. The government is facing criticism over foreign labor abuse, illegal overstays, and unregulated short-term rentals. And tourism, despite the money it brings in, is being wrapped into those larger concerns. More visitors mean more strain on public services, housing, and infrastructure. Not everyone is excited about that. Some lawmakers have proposed stricter visa screening in major cities like Tokyo, Osaka, and Kyoto, places that are seeing the biggest waves of inbound travel. Others have suggested setting quotas for high-volume months or regions, limiting how many people can enter at once. There's even talk of regulating Airbnb-style properties and foreign-run hostels, many of which operate in gray legal areas. Right now, if you're from the US, Canada, Australia, or most of Europe, you can still visit Japan without a visa for short-term stays. That hasn't changed yet. But the way you enter the country has already become more regulated, and the way you move around once you're inside is being monitored more closely than ever before. This doesn't mean Japan is closing its doors, but it does mean the doors aren't swinging quite as wide anymore. And if you've been thinking, I'll just wait a year or two, you might want to rethink that timeline. Because what feels like a minor form today could easily become a restrictive process tomorrow. Even if you manage to beat the rising prices, navigate the tourist crowds, and clear Japan's increasingly strict entry procedures, there's still one more factor you can't ignore, and it has nothing to do with Japan's hospitality and everything to do with its neighbors. Because in 2025, East Asia is becoming one of the most geopolitically tense regions in the world. Right now, the world is watching as tensions between China and Taiwan continue to escalate. What used to be political posturing has become something much more serious. Military exercises, naval blockades, airspace violations. It's no longer a question of if something will happen, it's a question of when. And sitting just across the water from all of it, Japan. Japan is one of America's strongest allies in the region, and it hosts dozens of US military bases, including major installations in Okinawa and across mainland Japan. If any kind of regional conflict erupts, even a limited one, Japan will be directly in the blast radius, not in terms of danger to civilians necessarily, but in terms of global reaction. Airlines would immediately begin rerouting flights to avoid conflict zones. Some international carriers might cancel service to the region altogether, as we've already seen happen with other global hotspots. Flight prices would spike, tourism would come to a grinding halt, insurance premiums would go through the roof, and governments around the world could issue travel advisories or outright bans. It wouldn't take much. One military miscalculation, one trade blockade, one international incident, and suddenly, Japan could become logistically, or politically, unreachable. It's not just China and Taiwan. North Korea has continued missile testing in 2025, some of which have landed near Japanese waters. South Korea and Japan, while improving relations, still face lingering tensions over history and trade. The region is a pressure cooker, and Japan is right in the middle of it, not as a provocateur, but as a highly strategic player caught between global powers. This doesn't mean Japan is unsafe today. Far from it. Japan is still one of the safest countries in the world for travelers. But geopolitical safety isn't just about what's happening inside the country. It's about the region surrounding it. And right now, that region is on edge. So if you're planning your dream trip for someday, think carefully, because you could wake up one morning to a news headline that changes everything. No warning, no buildup, just closed airspace, canceled itineraries, and a giant question mark on when or if you'll get another chance. Japan isn't the problem, but global instability might make it a casualty of the moment. And when that happens, the question won't be, should you go? It'll be, why didn't you go when you still could? Even if the paperwork doesn't change, even if the policies stay the same, there's still one massive factor that could reshape your entire trip. And no government can control it. The climate. Japan is one of the most beautiful countries on Earth. The cherry blossoms in spring, the fiery red maples in fall, the snow-capped mountains, the quiet forests, the rice paddies that stretch for miles. It's a place that feels in tune with the seasons in a way few countries do. But in 2025, those seasons are changing rapidly. Heat waves are getting longer, hotter, and more dangerous. Cities like Tokyo, Osaka, and Nagoya are experiencing stretches of days where temperatures soar past 40 degrees Celsius. That's over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. People are being hospitalized. Train systems are slowing down to prevent rail expansion. Outdoor festivals and hiking routes are being canceled or shut down entirely. And it doesn't stop with summer. Typhoons are becoming stronger and more erratic. They're showing up earlier in the season, lingering longer than expected, and causing more destruction than in past decades. Roads flood, flights are grounded, train lines are shut down for hours, sometimes days. In places like Kumamoto, Nagano, and Shizuoka, extreme weather has already damaged important landmarks and made once stable transportation routes unreliable. Meanwhile, winter is starting to look unpredictable too. Some areas are getting record-breaking snowfalls, burying roads and cutting off access to entire towns. And beyond just weather inconveniences, nature is physically reshaping the landscape. Historic hiking trails have been washed out by sudden rains. Villages like Shirakawa, known for their UNESCO-listed thatched roof houses, are seeing rising water levels inch closer to structures that have stood for centuries. Coastal towns are reinforcing seawalls. Mountain towns are installing new landslide warning systems because the risk has become that frequent. If you've imagined Japan as a place of timeless serenity, where the seasons are reliable, the mountains are quiet, and the countryside feels untouched, that version of Japan is under real pressure. Yes, those places still exist. Yes, they're still beautiful. But the truth is, no one knows how long they'll stay that way. So let's take a step back. You've made it through the rising prices, the flights, the hotels, the meals that cost double what they did just a few years ago. You've navigated the crowds, the overwhelmed temples, the packed bullet trains, the once hidden gems, now swarmed by Instagram-fueled day trippers. You've even managed to plan around the typhoons, the heat waves, the vanishing snow, and the landslides that keep rewriting the map of what's safe, accessible, or even standing. But there's one question left. Will Japan still be there? The version you imagined when you're finally ready to go? Because this isn't just about logistics. It's not about getting a good deal on a flight or finding the right season to visit. It's about the bigger shift happening all around us, one that no one really talks about until it's too late. Travel is changing. Borders that were once wide open are getting narrower. Destinations that once welcomed everyone are starting to pull back. Weather is becoming less predictable. And politics? They're making everything more fragile than we want to admit. Japan is still open, still magical, still worth every second of your time. But it's not immune to the world. The truth is, the version of Japan you've been dreaming of might already be fading. Not gone, not lost forever, but changing, becoming something else. Maybe it's stricter entry policies. Maybe it's price hikes that put it out of reach. Maybe it's a climate event that washes out a region you plan to explore. Or maybe, just maybe, it's a geopolitical storm that closes the door for reasons completely out of anyone's control. And by the time it all unfolds, it won't matter how good your itinerary was. You'll either have gone or you won't. So ask yourself this: What are you really waiting for? Are you waiting for the price to drop? It probably won't. Are you waiting for the perfect time? That doesn't exist. Are you waiting for everything to be stable? Good luck with that. Sometimes the clearest signal is the quiet one, and all signs are pointing to now. Not someday, not next year, not when you finally have time, now. Because the opportunity isn't guaranteed. The version of Japan that's still accessible, still awe-inspiring, still deeply authentic, it's not going to wait for you. So, if it's been sitting in your heart, sitting on your list, waiting patiently in your notes app or bucket list folder, maybe it's time. Before the world gets in the way, before the door closes, and before the place you always dreamed of visiting becomes the place you almost did.